Hey everyone, I'm Sarah, and I'm thrilled to welcome you back to Native Speakers.
And I'm Johnny. We're here to help you master English as naturally and practically as possible.
Today's lesson is essential if you're looking to advance your career or land that dream job in project management.
That's right. So grab your notebooks, get comfortable, and let's dive into project management vocabulary that will seriously boost your professional English.
So, Johnny, I've been thinking, why is project management vocabulary so crucial for English learners today?
That's a fantastic question, Sarah. You know, project management has become a universal language in the business world. Whether you're working in tech, marketing, construction, or even healthcare, these terms pop up everywhere. If you want to work with international teams or global companies, knowing this vocabulary isn't just helpful, it's essential.
Exactly. And here's the thing. When you walk into an interview or a meeting and you confidently use terms like deliverables, stakeholders, or scope, people immediately recognize you as someone who understands professional business culture.
Absolutely. It's like a secret handshake in the business world. So let's start with the foundation. Sarah, what's the first term every English learner should know?
Well, let's start with the word project itself. Now, I know that sounds basic, but hear me out. A project isn't just any task or job. In business English, a project is a temporary endeavor with a specific goal, a defined beginning and end, and unique deliverables.
Right, and that leads us perfectly to our next term, deliverables. Sarah, can you break that down?
Of course, deliverables are the tangible or intangible outputs that a project produces. Think of them as the things you deliver at the end of a project. For example, if you're working on a website project, your deliverables might include the website design, the coding, the content, and the final testing report.
I love that example. And here's a real-life scenario. Imagine you're in a meeting and your manager asks, "What are the key deliverables for this quarter?" If you freeze up because you don't know that word, you've just missed an opportunity to showcase your understanding. But if you confidently respond, "Our key deliverables include the marketing strategy document, the social media campaign launch, and the quarterly performance report," boom, you sound like a pro.
That's so true. And speaking of sounding professional, let's talk about stakeholders. This is a word you'll hear constantly in business environments.
Stakeholders are all the people who have an interest or investment in your project's success. They could be your clients, your team members, your company executives, or even external partners.
Exactly. And here's why this matters for English learners. When you're working in an international environment, you need to understand that different stakeholders have different priorities and communication styles. For instance, I once worked on a project where our stakeholders included the CEO, the IT department, and our external clients in Japan. Each group needed updates in different formats and at different frequencies.
That's a perfect real-world example, and it shows why cultural awareness and vocabulary go hand in hand. Now, let's move on to scope. Sarah, this is such a critical term. Can you explain it?
Absolutely. The scope of a project defines what's included and what's excluded from the project. It's basically the boundaries of what you're responsible for delivering. Think of it like a fence around your project. Everything inside the fence is your responsibility, everything outside is not.
I love that analogy. And there's a related phrase that's super important, scope creep. This happens when the project keeps expanding beyond its original boundaries without adjusting the timeline, budget, or resources.
Oh, scope creep is every project manager's nightmare. Here's a funny but realistic example. Imagine you're hired to design a company logo. That's your scope. But then the client says, "Hey, while you're at it, could you also design our website? Oh, and maybe some business cards? And how about a full branding package?" Suddenly, what was supposed to be a one-week project has turned into a 3-month ordeal, and you haven't adjusted your contract or your fee. That's scope creep.
Oh, I've definitely been there. And that's why the next term is so important, Timeline. A timeline is the schedule that outlines when different phases of the project will be completed.
Right. And in professional English, you'll often hear people say things like, "What's our timeline looking like?" Or, "We need to compress the timeline to meet the deadline." Understanding these phrases helps you participate actively in planning discussions.
Exactly. And speaking of deadlines, let's talk about milestone. A milestone is a significant point or event in the project timeline. It's like a checkpoint that shows you've achieved something important.
I think of milestones as the mini celebrations along the way to your final goal. For example, if you're launching a new product, your milestones might include completing market research, finalizing the product design, completing prototype testing, and launching the marketing campaign.
Perfect breakdown. And in meetings, you might hear someone say, "Have we hit our Q1 milestone?" Or, "We're approaching a critical milestone next week." Being able to understand and respond to these questions is crucial.
Absolutely. Now let's talk about resources. In project management English, resources refer to everything you need to complete the project: people, money, equipment, materials, time, and even information.
Right. And there's a common phrase, resource allocation. This means deciding how to distribute your resources across different tasks or team members. For instance, if you have 5 team members and 3 major tasks, you need to allocate your resources efficiently to get everything done on time.
Exactly. And here's where it gets interesting for English learners. In international business settings, you might hear someone say, "We need to optimize our resource allocation," which basically means we need to use what we have more efficiently. These kinds of business phrases can sound intimidating, but once you understand the vocabulary, they're actually quite straightforward.
So true. Now let's move on to budget. Everyone knows what a budget is in general, right? But in project management English, you'll hear specific phrases like over budget, under budget, or budget constraints.
Yes, and here's a realistic scenario. Imagine you're in a meeting and someone says, "We're tracking 15% over budget in the marketing department." What they mean is that the marketing team has spent 15% more money than was originally planned. Understanding this helps you grasp the financial health of a project.
Excellent point. And related to budget is ROI, return on investment. This is a measure of how much value or profit you get back compared to what you invested. In English business conversations, people often ask, "What's the ROI on this project?" They want to know if it's worth the time, money, and effort.
Right. And here's where language and culture intersect beautifully. In many English-speaking business cultures, there's a strong emphasis on measurable results and quantifiable success. So being able to discuss ROI, metrics, and KPIs, key performance indicators, shows that you understand not just the language, but the business mindset.
That's brilliant, Sarah. Speaking of KPIs, let's explain that term. KPIs are specific, measurable values that show how effectively you're achieving your business objectives. They're like the report card for your project.
Exactly. For example, if you're running a social media campaign, your KPIs might include number of followers gained, engagement rate, click-through rate, and conversion rate. These numbers tell you whether your project is succeeding or needs adjustment.
Perfect. Now let's talk about team dynamics. The term cross-functional team is super common in modern workplaces. Can you explain that, Sarah?
Of course, a cross-functional team brings together people from different departments or areas of expertise to work on a single project. For instance, you might have designers, developers, marketers, and salespeople all working together. The idea is that diverse perspectives lead to better solutions.
And in my experience, cross-functional teams are where your English communication skills really get tested. You're not just talking to people in your own field, you're explaining technical concepts to non-technical people, or understanding marketing strategies when you're an engineer. That's when having a strong business vocabulary becomes absolutely crucial.
That's such an important point, Johnny, and it leads us to our next term, collaboration. In project management, collaboration means working together effectively, sharing ideas, and coordinating efforts towards a common goal.
Right, and you'll hear phrases like collaborative environment or collaborative tools, referring to software like Slack, Microsoft Teams, or Asana that help teams work together, especially when they're in different locations.
Absolutely. And speaking of different locations, let's talk about remote work and virtual teams. These terms have become incredibly important, especially in recent years. A virtual team is a group of people who work together from different geographic locations, relying on communication technology.
Yes, and here's a practical English tip. In meetings with virtual teams, you'll often hear phrases like, "Can you hear me okay? I'm going to share my screen now. You're on mute," or "Let's take this offline." These are common virtual meeting expressions that every English learner should know.
You're on mute has become the anthem of modern business communication. But seriously, understanding these phrases helps you navigate virtual meetings with confidence.
Definitely. Now let's move on to some action-oriented vocabulary. Execute or implementation. These terms refer to actually carrying out the plan and doing the work.
Right. You might hear someone say, "We've completed the planning phase, now it's time to execute," or "The implementation phase will begin next Monday." These phrases signal that it's time to stop planning and start doing.
Exactly. And related to execution is task management. This refers to how you organize, prioritize, and track individual tasks within a project. Common phrases include assign tasks, track progress, and update task status.
Yes, and here's a real-life example that includes humor and practicality. I once worked with a team where our project manager would start every morning meeting by saying, "Let's do a quick task status update. Everyone share one thing you completed yesterday and one thing you're tackling today." At first, as a non-native English speaker on the team, I found this intimidating, but I quickly learned that phrases like "I completed," "I'm working on," and "I'm tackling" were simple ways to communicate progress.
That's a great example of how immersing yourself in professional environments accelerates your English learning. Now, let's talk about risk management. This is the process of identifying potential problems before they happen and planning how to handle them.
Right. In meetings, you might hear phrases like risk assessment, risk mitigation, or contingency plan. A contingency plan is basically your plan B, what you'll do if something goes wrong.
Exactly. And here's why this vocabulary matters. Employers love candidates who can think ahead and handle problems proactively. If you can discuss risk management in English during an interview, you're showing both language proficiency and strategic thinking.
That's such an important point, Johnny, and it leads us to our next term, objectives versus goals. While these words are often used interchangeably in casual conversation, in project management, they have subtle differences.
Right. Goals are broad, long-term achievements you want to reach. Objectives are specific, measurable steps that help you achieve those goals. For example, your goal might be to increase brand awareness, while your objectives might include gain 10,000 new social media followers in 6 months and publish 20 blog posts this quarter.
Perfect distinction. And this brings us to SMART goals. This is an acronym that's used constantly in business English. SMART stands for specific, measurable, achievable, relevant, and time-bound.
Yes, and being able to articulate SMART goals in English immediately elevates your professional credibility. For instance, instead of saying, "I want to improve my sales," you'd say, "I aim to increase my sales by 20% within the next quarter by implementing a new customer follow-up system."
Brilliant example. Now, let's talk about communication itself. The term status update refers to a regular report on how the project is progressing. You might hear someone say, "Can you give us a quick status update?" or "Send me a status update by the end of the day."
Exactly. And related phrases include progress report, weekly check-in, and stand-up meeting. A stand-up meeting, by the way, is a short, often daily meeting where team members quickly share what they're working on. Originally called stand-up because people literally stood up to keep the meeting brief.
I love that. It's these little cultural details that make language learning so rich and interesting. Now, let's discuss bottleneck. This is such a visual and useful term.
A bottleneck is a point in the project where progress slows down or gets stuck, usually because resources are limited or a particular task is taking longer than expected. Think of it like a physical bottle. The narrow neck restricts the flow.
Perfect analogy. You might hear someone say, "We've hit a bottleneck in the design phase," meaning something is holding up progress there. Identifying and addressing bottlenecks is crucial for keeping projects on track.
Absolutely. And that leads us to workflow, the sequence of tasks and processes that need to happen to complete a project. Optimizing your workflow means finding the most efficient way to get things done.
Right, and in modern business English, you'll hear about workflow automation or streamlining workflows, which refer to using technology or better processes to make work more efficient.
Excellent. Now let's talk about some meeting-specific vocabulary. Agenda is the list of topics that will be discussed in a meeting. Before any professional meeting, you should receive an agenda so you can prepare.
Yes, and related phrases include action items. These are specific tasks that people need to complete after the meeting. At the end of a meeting, someone usually summarizes the action items and assigns them to specific people.
Exactly. You might hear, "Let's review the action items before we wrap up," or, "Sarah, can you take the action item to follow up with the client?" Understanding these phrases helps you actively participate in meetings rather than just passively listening.
That's such an important distinction. Active participation versus passive observation. Now, let's discuss feedback and revision. Feedback is input or critique given to improve something, while revisions are the changes you make based on that feedback.
Right. And in professional English, you'll hear phrases like constructive feedback, which means criticism that's meant to be helpful rather than just negative. You might also hear iterate, which means to make repeated improvements based on feedback.
Yes, and here's a motivational insight. Learning to give and receive feedback in English is one of the most valuable professional skills you can develop. It shows maturity, openness to growth, and strong communication abilities.
Absolutely. Now let's talk about project phases. Most projects have distinct stages: initiation, planning, execution, monitoring, and closure.
Right. During initiation, you define the project and get approval. In planning, you develop detailed roadmaps and schedules. Execution is when you do the actual work. Monitoring means tracking progress and making adjustments. And closure involves wrapping up, delivering final outputs, and evaluating what you learned.
Perfect summary. And in business conversations, you might hear, "We're in the execution phase," or "We're approaching project closure," which immediately tells everyone where things stand.
Exactly. And speaking of evaluation, let's discuss post-mortem or retrospective. These are meetings held after a project finishes, where the team discusses what went well, what went wrong, and what they can improve next time.
Yes, and here's a cultural note. In many English-speaking business environments, there's a strong culture of continuous improvement and learning from mistakes. So retrospectives aren't about blaming people, they're about making the team better.
That's such an important cultural insight, Johnny, and it connects to another key term, accountability. This means taking responsibility for your work and following through on your commitments.
Right. You might hear, "Who's accountable for this task?" or "Let's establish clear accountability." Being accountable is highly valued in professional environments, and being able to discuss it in English shows you understand professional expectations.
Absolutely.
Now, let's talk about some technology and tools. Project management software refers to digital tools like Asana, Trello, Monday.com, or Jira that help teams organize and track projects.
Yes, and if you're interviewing for a job, being able to say, I have experience with Asana and Trello, or I'm proficient in using project management software, can really set you apart from other candidates.
Definitely. And related to technology, you should know terms like dashboard, which is a visual interface that displays key project information at a glance, and Gantt chart, which is a bar chart that shows the project schedule.
Excellent. And here's some practical advice. Even if you don't have professional project management experience yet, you can start using these terms when describing your own personal projects or studies. For instance, I created a timeline for my thesis research, or I managed the scope of my volunteer project carefully.
That's brilliant advice, Johnny. It shows how English learners can bridge the gap between learning vocabulary and actually using it in real contexts.
Exactly. Now let's discuss delegation, the act of assigning tasks or responsibilities to other team members. Good project managers know how to delegate effectively.
Right, and related phrases include empower team members, which means giving people the authority and resources they need to complete their tasks independently, and micromanage, which means controlling every small detail of someone's work, something you definitely want to avoid.
Yes, nobody likes a micromanager. Now let's talk about prioritization, deciding which tasks are most important and should be done first.
You'll often hear phrases like, let's prioritize this task, or what are our top priorities this week? Being able to discuss priorities shows you can think strategically and manage time well.
Absolutely, and that connects to another important term, critical path. This is the sequence of tasks that determines the minimum time needed to complete a project. If any task on the critical path is delayed, the entire project is delayed.
Yes, understanding the critical path helps you identify which tasks absolutely cannot be late and which ones have some flexibility. In meetings, you might hear, this is on the critical path, so we need to stay on schedule.
Perfect. Now let's discuss quality assurance, or QA. This refers to the processes used to ensure that deliverables meet required standards before they're delivered to the client or stakeholder.
Right, and related terms include testing, bug fixes, and quality control. In many projects, especially in software development, QA is a crucial phase that happens before launch.
Exactly. And here's a real-world tip. When discussing your work experience in English, mentioning that you implemented quality assurance processes or conducted thorough testing demonstrates attention to detail and professionalism.
Great point. Now, as we're approaching the end of our lesson, let's discuss a few more advanced terms. Change management refers to the process of managing changes to the project scope, timeline, or resources.
Yes, and in dynamic work environments, change is inevitable. So being able to discuss how you adapted to changing requirements or managed scope changes effectively shows flexibility and problem-solving skills.
Absolutely. And finally, let's talk about lessons learned, the insights and knowledge gained from completing a project that can be applied to future projects.
This is such an important concept. At the end of projects, teams document lessons learned so they can continuously improve. And in interviews or performance reviews, being able to articulate what you've learned from your experiences is incredibly valuable.
Wow, Johnny, we've covered so much ground today, from basic terms like deliverables and stakeholders to more advanced concepts like critical path and change management.
We really have. And here's what I want all of you watching to remember. Learning project management vocabulary isn't just about memorizing words, it's about opening doors to new career opportunities and professional growth.
Exactly. And every term we discussed today is used in real workplaces by real professionals around the world. When you master this vocabulary, you're not just learning English, you're building a professional identity and preparing yourself for international career success.
And remember, the best way to truly learn these terms is to use them. Practice incorporating them into your conversations, your emails, and even your personal planning. The more you use them, the more natural they'll become.
Absolutely. And if today's lesson felt like a lot to absorb, don't worry, that's completely normal. We've packed this lesson with information because we want to give you comprehensive, professional-level content. Watch this video multiple times, take notes, and practice using these terms in your own context.
And here's your homework. Try describing a project you're working on, even if it's something personal like planning a trip or organizing an event, using at least 10 terms from today's lesson. This practice will help cement the vocabulary in your mind.
That's a fantastic homework assignment, Johnny. And everyone, if you found this lesson valuable, please hit that subscribe button and turn on notifications so you never miss our future lessons here at Native Speakers.
We're dedicated to bringing you practical, career-focused English lessons that actually make a difference in your professional life. Your success is our success.
And drop a comment below telling us which project management term you found most useful, or if there are other professional topics you'd like us to cover in future videos.
Remember, fluency isn't just about grammar and pronunciation. It's about having the confidence and vocabulary to thrive in professional situations. And you're building that confidence right now, one lesson at a time.
We believe in you, and we're here to support your English learning journey every step of the way.
Thanks for watching, everyone. Keep practicing, stay motivated, and we'll see you in the next lesson.
Until next time, keep speaking, keep learning, and keep achieving your goals.
Bye, everyone.